we are on the Red Sea, aboard a helicopter with, if you look closely, a Yemeni and a Palestinian flag. Landing is underway and the target is pretty clear. A cargo ship en route from Turkey to India. As commandos, the men are dropped on deck, and within minutes the ship is hijacked. The crew, 25 men, appear to surrender without resistance. These are propaganda images made and distributed by Yemeni Houthis.
Far out in the Red Sea, a cargo ship sails into a Houthi ambush.
Japan has condemned the seizure of a Japanese-operated cargo ship by Yemen's Houthi rebels.
Yemenis have been flocking to the port of Al Salif on the Red Sea to visit the cargo ship, which was hijacked last month by Houthi rebels.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have released footage of their military wing hijacking a cargo ship with Israel links in the Red Sea.
Recently, there were several attacks on cargo ships. Those have been claimed, those attacks, by the Houthi rebels. Who are these people? Why are they attacking container ships? How difficult is their situation now when they go through the Suez Canal? And why, in addition to their own, also the Palestinian flag? These are the Ansar Allah, or the Houthis Explained. A wise woman once said an explainer wouldn't be an explainer without a lesson in geography and history. Exactly. World map. Houthis are originally from here. Today, it is the province of Sada. Although most Yemenis are Sunni Muslims, the largest movement within Islam, the same is not true of the Houthis. They are predominantly Zaydite, a current within Shiite Islam. The difference between Sunni and Shiite Muslims, and sure, this is a simplified version though, is that they did not agree on his successor after the death of Prophet Muhammad. So Zaydites are Shiite, but in terms of religious doctrine, they are closer to Sunnism again. For example, they also make their own version of Sharia law, while borrowing rules from Sunnis. Back to northern Yemen. In the 1980s, Sunni Saudi Arabia put up Salafist schools and mosques there. But part of the population does not want this. They take to the streets with the message, we want to preserve our identity and our faith. Do they under the leadership of this man, Hussein Badr al-Din al-Houthi? So that's also where that name Houthis comes from. There is no question of violence for a long time. When the US invades Iraq in 2003, the Houthis take to the streets again, for Houthis believe it is their religious duty. And so they now see America as such an illegitimate ruler. But those protests are quashed by President Ali Abdullah Saleh. They are furious and call him a puppet of America. It escalates and there are violent confrontations, with the government on one side, with support from Saudi Arabia, and on the other, the Houthi rebels with support from Iran. Iran? Yes, because they are fine with anyone wanting to fight against their eternal enemy, Saudi Arabia. In 2004, al-Houthi is killed by government forces. The Houthis fight on until there is a ceasefire in 2010. And then there is peace. Well, for a while then. Because a year later, the Arab Spring begins. A massive eruption of discontent in the Arab world. People everywhere take to the streets to protest against their governments. Also in Yemen. The protests are peaceful, but the government is cracking down. Eventually Saleh resigns. There is a so-called national dialogue led by the international community. All the countries that were active participate in the Arab Spring. The goal, to create a new Yemen. A constitution is made, but the Houthis refuse to sign it. The objection, Yemen would become a federal state. You probably know that form of government from the US, the Houthis were not waiting for this. Because in this way, they would only gain power in their own territories. They want more. The armed Houthis are moving from the north toward the capital, Sana'a, and eventually gain control of that too. From then on, they call themselves Ansar Allah, helpers of God. then things go all wrong in Yemen. Neighboring Saudi Arabia, which has always meddled in Yemen, is bombing areas that the Houthis control. And they're getting support from the US, the UK, and France. There are a lot of civilian deaths, but the Houthis are hardly losing any ground. And the people? They live in hell to this day. According to the United Nations, the war has already claimed at least 370,000 lives. In addition, it has plunged millions of Yemenis into, as the UN puts it, the world's greatest humanitarian disaster. There is famine, not enough water, disease, and a lack of medical aid. It is also called the Forgotten War because you read and hear so little about it. And on top of that, the Houthi regime oppresses the population. There is no democracy, no free press. Women have virtually no rights. And there are no organizations that protect human rights. They indoctrinate children with their increasingly more radical ideology, use child soldiers, and for the slightest thing you can end up in jail. And with that, the term Houthi rebels is actually obsolete. In many areas, they are simply the rulers. A bit like the Taliban in Afghanistan. Back to now, because what started out as this, literally with Kalashnikovs and flip-flops, has evolved into this. The Houthis have been fighting for 20 years. They know how to fight, they know how to put weapons together. And the fact that they create and spread this kind of footage shows that the organization has become more professional over the years. And they also feel invincible. They haven't lost a battle yet, and Saudi Arabia now seems to be retreating as well. And they have serious weapons at their disposal. Tanks, drones, helicopters, and... Was Israel today also bombarded by Houthis from Yemen? They also apparently have the stuff to hit long-range targets. Where did they get that? Iran smuggled a lot of high-tech weapons into Yemen, though often in parts. And they captured a lot of weapons from the Saudi and Yemeni military. Then the question, why ships and tankers on the Red Sea? One more time back to that hijacking with that chopper. Because as I said at the beginning, you see a Yemeni and Palestinian flag. And the second one, that's what it's all about. Listen to this. In the war in Gaza, they declared solidarity with the Palestinians. And so they've been attacking ships going to and from Israel for weeks. The rebels say they won't stop until Israel stops the war in Gaza. And if you paid very close attention at the beginning of the video, you would have also heard this. Houthis hate the US and Israel. And this is not only heard, but also seen. These signs show the official slogan of the Houthis. And if you translate that, literally it reads, Allah is the greatest, death to America. Death to Israel, curse all Jews and Islam will prevail. The ships they attack are sailing across the Red Sea, one of the most important trade routes in shipping. Each year, some 23,000 tankers, cargo, and container ships take the route between Europe and the East. And by attacking ships, Houthi rebels are showing the world that they can control the situation in the Red Sea, with dire economic consequences. And intervene? Military intervention would mean a huge escalation. Meanwhile, the US has set up a special operation to protect ships in the Red Sea. The Netherlands is also participating in this. Whether it will help is the question. Because the Houthis have already said that military protection is not going to change anything in their plans. And negotiating with the Houthis is very difficult for the international community. So a solution is not immediately in sight, unless there's a ceasefire in Gaza. So wait and see. But at least I'll keep an eye on it for you. So if you want to stay up to date, just hit the subscribe button. Yo!